I hope everyone is doing all right today. I am your host, Jamarl Thomas, and this is the Progressive Soapbox. So let's hop across the pond. I've done this video once, but I didn't necessarily like that video, and that video went way too long. So let's try to do this in a bit better time. The Prime Minister, or Theresa May, is in a dire situation. And because she is the Prime Minister of the UK, that means that the UK is in a dire situation. They're leaving the European Union in 2 days. And if you ask anyone, any person on the street, any person in Parliament, hell, if you ask Theresa May herself, what does Brexit mean at this moment, she will still have no idea. Nobody knows what Brexit means at this point. And you can imagine that is somewhat of a traumatic thing, seeing that you're supposed to leave the European Union in 2 days. I'm going to give just a brief update on what has been taking place and what is currently taking place. And I'm going to go through it relatively quickly because I've done these videos prior. The Prime Minister, or you should say the UK, was supposed to be leaving on the 29th of March. The Prime Minister could not get her bill through. And in one situation after the next, they voted her bill down. There were 3 votes on her withdrawal bill, all of which were voted down. On the day that they were supposed to be leaving on the 29th, the Prime Minister put up a partial version of her withdrawal bill, and it once again was voted down. The Prime Minister at this point is a certain degree of desperation. As I said before, they have 2 days that in 2 days they're supposed to be leaving the European Union. She's flown to Europe to beg and plead them, please give us an extension, because they are unprepared for a no-deal crashing out of the European Union, Mad Max, Brexit. Please give us an extension. She's not just pleading with the European Union for that extension, who, by the way, it's not a foregone conclusion that she's going to get. Any of the member states can turn her down, in which case Britain is crashing out of the European Union in 2 days. It's fate at this point. It's not its own. She's also went begging Jeremy Corbyn. She's essentially gone with this thing of trying to get Jeremy Corbyn to assist her in coming up with some kind of resolution. The wild part about this is when Prime Minister took over, she tried to run roughshod for the process itself, meaning they had somewhat of an insular team and they came up with this version of Brexit that nobody in Parliament agreed with. And even her own party voted her down, meaning the Prime Minister, who's supposed to have somewhat of her way in Parliament, lost control of the Brexit process itself. What she wanted to do was magnificently unpopular, not just with Labour, but also with her own team. She's at the point now where she is trying to get Jeremy Corbyn's assistance. She is openly asking for his help. Now she's doing this knowing that this is going to anger the elements of her party, and her party is pissed off at her, magnificently so, that she's taken this course. They're considered a betrayal. You're betraying Brexit. How dare you allow the leader of the opposition in on what is supposed to be a Tory Brexit? This is an utter and complete betrayal. But she doesn't have a choice. What is the Prime Minister going to do? She can't get her withdrawal bill through. There's no bill that has been able to get through Parliament. What is she going to do? She has the responsibility of a country that goes beyond her own personal brand of politics. And with that responsibility of the country, she says, look, the country matters more to me. I can't get this over. I can't get this over the finish line. She's threatened using the no-deal Brexit in and of itself as a threat, meaning we're going to crash out if you don't sign on to my deal. That's the reason for continuously putting her deal up and waiting till get down to the clock is run down in order to try to get her deal through. That failed. That threat of no-deal Brexit wasn't enough in order to get them to force them to vote for her bill. She even threatened Jeremy Corbyn, meaning saying she was going to use Jeremy Corbyn as a weapon, knowing that if she has an election, it is very possible that Jeremy Corbyn would win, meaning Labour would win and Jeremy Corbyn would be the Prime Minister of Britain. This scares the hell out of the Tories, out of her own party, and she used this as a weapon. For this particular case, they wouldn't even allow her to use this as a weapon. They neutered her right off the bat, saying they would essentially vote her down if she tried to call a snap election for something like this. The Prime Minister and the UK is in a dire situation. Jeremy Corbyn is in a position where he has to accept her with this. Meaning, from party politics standpoint, Theresa May floundered on this. This is on her. By the same token, the country is looking at this beyond the level of politics and is looking at this from the standpoint of the country, not purely from a political, ideological basis, even though some people may want to remain and some people may want to leave. At the end of the day, they don't want bad things to happen to the country to which they live in. So they don't overtly care about the party politics. They care more so about, we don't want to crash out of the European Union unprepared. That's what they care about. So Jeremy Corbyn, even though from a party standpoint, he has a responsibility to try to take power, from a statesman standpoint or from a country standpoint, he can't be that craven. He can't be that craven. He has two responsibilities that he has to mend. One, I need to walk the line with my party, meaning I need to be able to take power credibly. Two, at the very least, I need to look as if I am willing to work with the opposition or the prime minister in getting something through, so that if anything goes bad, they can't just point to me and say I was so craven that I care more about party politics over the country itself. He has walked the line. Now, Corbyn has come on and said we're openly okay with working with the prime minister, but we have no idea on what she wants to compromise on. Meaning, what of her red lines that she's willing to compromise on to get this deal over the finish line? And from Corbyn's standpoint, he wants a customs union. And again, they consider that an outright and an utter betrayal. Let's take a look at this. The prime minister gave a speech that got memed to death, where she was talking about Brexit and this ability or need to compromise. Now, you must understand, this was a woman that didn't want to compromise the entire time that Brexit has been taking place. Nearly 3 years. And now at the last minute, all of her doors have been closed. Her own party is not even going to assist her in getting this over the finish line because her own party disagrees with her. With 2 days to go, now she's open to compromise. Now she's open to compromise. This may be one of those too little, too late things. And at the very least, Corbyn is likely going to extract some concession. And that is going to break the Tory party. It's already fracturing the party itself. Let's take a look at the video. Theresa May is trying to explain herself to the country on why this course of action, meaning her openness to Jeremy Corbyn at this point, is paramount to trying to get the deal through. And even making this argument of, I think the country wants us to compromise anyway. Yes. Going all the way back in the beginning, not at the very end of your life or at the end of your rope, acts for compromise. Let's take a listen.
People have been asking me what on earth's happening with Brexit. And I can understand that because, after all, it's nearly 3 years since people voted in the referendum for the UK to leave the European Union. Well, where we're at is that the government negotiated a deal with the EU, and my preference was for that deal to be passed by Parliament, and we could leave with the EU on that basis. But Parliament's now rejected that deal 3 times, and right now, as things stand, I can't see them accepting it. But at the same time, Parliament has also said that they don't want us to leave without a deal, with no deal. Indeed, this very week, Parliament's been legislating to block no deal. So the choice that lies ahead of us is either leaving the European Union with a deal or not leaving at all. Now, I think, the government thinks, we absolutely must leave the European Union. We must deliver Brexit. That means we need to get a deal over the line. And that's why we've been looking for new ways, a new approach to find an agreement in Parliament. And that means cross-party talks. And when you think about it, people didn't vote on party lines when it came to the Brexit referendum. And I think often that members of the public want to see their politicians working together more often. Now, there's lots of things on which I disagree with the Labour Party on policy issues. But on Brexit, I think there are some things we agree on. Ending free movement, ensuring we leave with a good deal, protecting jobs, protecting security. And so we're talking, can we find a way through this that ensures that we can get a good deal and a deal agreed through Parliament? It'll mean compromise on both sides. But I believe that delivering Brexit is the most important thing for us. I think people voted to leave the EU. We have a duty as a Parliament to deliver that. I want to do that in a good way, that doesn't disrupt people's lives, that protects jobs, protects our security, protects the United Kingdom.
She looks rough in this video. I'm looking at her eyes in this, and my mom sometimes, she would say, your eyes look weak. She's like, your eyes look weak. Because she's looking at your eyes and she's making this kind of assessment on the way how you're coming across. And she's right. Sometimes the eyes give things away, like fatigue, tiredness, those type of things. She looks tired. And, I don't mean that as an insult. You can understand why she looks tired. She's been going around trying to cajole, beg, threaten members of Parliament to get a withdrawal bill through, including saying, I will fall on my sword and I will give you my head. And that still hasn't been enough to get her deal through. They just magnificently disagree with her. You can understand the public itself was almost half and half on the whole Brexit thing in and of itself. So, not the easiest task to get through, especially when you have an intransigent Labour Party that doesn't necessarily believe in what you're doing. But simultaneously, nor did you try to reach out to them and try to come up to some consensus in the first place. Also, second point, the no deal Brexit thing. This is the dumbest thing that I think I've ever heard. Now, I understand Parliament doesn't want a no deal Brexit. By the same token, you can't legislate a no deal Brexit. If you leave without coming to some resolution of a deal, then you, by definition, are leaving without a deal. Which means the Prime Minister is right. You have to agree to something in order to avoid a no-deal Brexit. You can't just say, we don't want a no-deal Brexit. I hope that makes sense. Meaning the only alternative, she's right, is just stay in the European Union if you can't come to some resolution of what the deal is. That would be an utter betrayal. The Prime Minister is somewhat boxed in here. Imagine yourself being in a negotiation and the person who you're negotiating with know that you are not leaving without a deal, which means that anything they give you ultimately is a thing that you will be forced to accept. This idea of legislating no deal away is nonsense. In order to get no deal, you have to come up with a deal. So that's somewhat of an update of what's taking place with Brexit. They have 2 days. They have no idea what Brexit is going to be. She says she's going to reach out to Labour. It is unclear on the areas to which she's willing to reach out to Labour on. 2 things, customs union versus single market. Jeremy Corbyn wants to remain within the customs union. This means that, think of like quotas and tariffs and those type of things are taken from the UK in the same way it's taken with the other countries, meaning the UK is lumping itself with the European Union with regards to tariffs. So the UK doesn't have to pay tariffs within the European Union as it's shipping goods and everything else. It's within the European Union itself. By the same token, the European Union takes control of that level of policy, meaning the UK is going to give up a little bit of its sovereignty, just like it would if it was within the European Union, in order to come to some arrangement on trade. By the same token, the single market is a little different. The single market has freedoms associated with it. I think they call it the 4 or 5 freedoms. It has to do with goods, services, people, and capital. I believe it's 4, which can flow freely within the single market itself. This is problematic for Britain, which means that Britain can't go this route because Britain has already said the part of the contest, part of the referendum itself, was fought on these lines of immigration, that Britain wants control of its borders. So if they sign up to the single market, they also have to sign up to the other freedoms. They are inseparable from each other. So I'm going to end this here because I think that's everything. Let's see if I missed anything. I'll just read it out. Turkey is part of a customs union with the European Union, but is not in a single market. The deal does not cover food or agriculture, services, or government procurement. The EU is not only a single market, it is also a customs union. The countries clubbed together and agreed to apply to the same tariffs to goods from outside of the union. Once goods have cleared customs in one country, they can be shipped in others in the union without further tariffs being imposed. So, if the UK is part of the customs union, the European Union at that point takes control of tariff policy. The UK lumps itself in. The UK can ship its goods to other parts in the UK and the European Union without those customs. Meaning businesses and those type of things can continue their typical business without getting hit with taxes. So let's go to single market. The European Union's single market is perhaps the most ambitious type of trade cooperation. That's because, as well as eliminating tariffs, quotas, or taxes on trade, it also includes free movement of goods, services, capital, and people. Good, got it. Also, a single market strives to remove so-called non-tariff barriers. Different rules on packaging, safety, and standards, and many others are abolished, and the same rules and regulations apply across the entire area. That's the other catch with the single market part. In order for the single market to work, they balance their rules together. So it's like, think of it as the European Union, and that to some degree makes trade policy. It's an overarching body in order to manage the trade relationships between the various countries within each other. So you know that there's going to be a quality associated with a particular product, regardless of which country it goes into, because there's an overarching rule set for all of the countries. Regulations, rules, all across the countries. You can imagine this, some countries chafe at this, because a rule may be beneficial to one, but not necessarily to the other. But you lose control of these policies because they get pushed up to a higher level, and your country's rules have to match the European Union's rules on certain trade regulation or trade relationships. I think that's everything. And they're right, the single market is somewhat ambitious because all of those countries have been lumped in together. Now this creates a massive trade relationships between the countries themselves, but what started off as a trade relationship is turning into almost like a government of sorts. It's turning into like a government in and of itself. All right, I'm going to end this. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.